we have here, it's obviously day one, and the theme is to create and collaborate, and it's creating unique spaces. I have to look, I'm Leigh-Anne Treadwell, I forgot to introduce myself earlier, Director of Bristol Upholstery Collective. It happens. And we've got Zoe Hewett, Stylemongers of Bristol, Sally Coulden from Red Dog Design Glass, and Ellie Shipman, who's an illustrator and artist. Really lovely to have you here. Thanks so much for coming, guys. Do you want to delve into and let everybody know a little bit more about what it is you're doing? Just introduce yourselves, and we'll take it from there. Let's get this conversation going. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellie Shipman. I'm an artist primarily. I do a lot of participatory work and public engagement projects with diverse communities, but I'm also very passionate about fabric design and surface pattern design, and I'm an illustrator as well. So Leigh-Anne and I have known each other for 5 years now, I think, and I've been a student on some of your upholstery courses as well. And now I'm trying to kind of bring together my love of pattern design with upholstery and interiors. So that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Cool. Hi, I'm Sally Coulden. I'm a landscape abstract artist, painter, and founder of Red Dog Glass Design. I'm on my 11th career change. I've done a lot of different things I'm a midwife, so I've delivered 400 babies. I'm a sexologist. I'm worked in the pharmaceutical industry. I worked in the city, and I resigned 6 years ago and went to art school, and launched Red Dog 3 years ago, having had an aha moment, which perhaps we'll touch on later. So I create Red Dog Glass Design creates bespoke glass panels using my artwork, and it's for residential and commercial spaces.
11 career changes, it's amazing. So I'm Zoe, I'm an interior designer, and my brand is Stylemongers of Bristol. I used to be a set and costume designer, and it's essentially the same job, except in home interiors it has to last more than 3 weeks. Same skills, different industry, so that's what I do. So basically one thing, not 11 things.
I'm sure you know. Ignore the 11. It's like ridiculously.
I love it.
So Zoe, then let's kick off. How did you make that jump from going from sets to people's homes?
The honest answer is I was really burnt out, and I found it really difficult to make a living as a set designer, and I just got bored. But actually, even as a kid, I was always making props for the plays that you put on for your grown-ups. We were always making ridiculous costumes and rivers out of crepe paper when I was like 5. So, and hanging out in the cupboard under the stairs. So I was always very interested in space. My grandfather was an architect. My uncle's a services engineer. So it's I think it's a bit in the genes. And I used to decorate rooms in the house when my parents went away for the weekend. When I was about 17, 18. And they kept it. So, but yeah, after 10 years of working in entertainment, I just decided to switch in a little artist's temper tantrum. And still doing it now.
Don't know what you want about. Brilliant. So, Sally, you talked about, you mentioned a aha moment.
Oh, yes. So what happened was when I went to art school, and fantastic, then I studied with full-time with a professional artist. I invested in being an apprentice for full-time for 6 months with this artist to really learn how to paint properly. So I set off, I got a studio. It was out in Thornbury, actually, because I couldn't get one in Bristol. And I thought this is all great. And then I realised that I actually needed to earn some money. And also my business brain was sort of going, I need to do a little bit more, I need to do something else. And I had an exhibition at Centre Space down St Leonard's Passage. And a couple of the paintings I did were very, very large Perspex paintings that I really love doing. And I suspended them from the ceiling of the gallery. And at the private view, I overheard this lady say to a friend, she said, "Oh, that would look interesting in the kitchen." It was like, boom, got it. Glass splashbacks, how difficult can that be? I knew nothing about glass. I knew nothing about not much about manufacturing, and so I spent the next year researching it and working out how I would work the process to actually make it work, contacting manufacturers, so doing a lot of research, engaging with a designer, and we got the website, we got the designs, I'd worked out the process, I'd organised and got a manufacturing partnership with legal documents, and launched in December 18.
Wowzers. It's a difficult bridge, isn't it, that artist to business person? Ellie, what's your thoughts on that? How have you been finding it?
Yeah, so my background was in fine art, which I studied at Chelsea College of Art. And coming from a fine art background where obviously we were in a very creative environment and creativity was really encouraged, which was amazing. However, I found it was very kind of concept-driven and very theory-based, which I did enjoy and found fascinating. But at the same time, I found that it didn't pursue the kind of joy of making and the kind of love of craft. And just, it took me probably about 8 years post-graduating to kind of just think what actually got me into art and being creative in the first place. And similarly to you, I was, drawing and rebelling from teachers from an early age. So it was just really nice to kind of rediscover that and actually, look into that joy again. So that kind of got me into going into illustrating again. And while I took kind of a year out, lived in Vietnam, in Hanoi for a year in 2019, just before COVID hit. And in that year, I kind of stopped working. I'd done a lot of public engagement projects, as I said, and community development work, and a lot of kind of public-facing projects. And actually, I thought to kind of reinvest that energy that I'd been putting out into different communities over that time, into me, into just kind of having a break and kind of looking inwards again a little bit, and use that year to build up my illustration portfolio and learn pattern design. So that kind of came from becoming a student in Skillshare, which is, you may have heard of it, it's like a global teaching platform, online teaching platform, which I now teach on. So that's been a really lovely journey as well, to kind of go from using Skillshare as a way to kind of top up my skill base, basically, and kind of patch together bits that I hadn't learned on my kind of formal training, I suppose. And do it for the love of it, which has been great.
This all sounds amazing. It all sounds like we're actually at the very beginning stages, potentially, of a new skill and a new career change and a new inward search, isn't it, into how then you do what you love on a daily basis without losing that passion and it becoming too business, and still keeping grasp of what it is that makes you tick. Do you ever struggle? Do you? I suppose the pendulum can swing, can't it? And it's a difficult balance. I mean, what kind of things do you do to keep yourself in the zone, on your track? How do you do this? How do you make it all work and juggle life? Life is also a really, really busy thing, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's really hard. I find it really hard. I think, setting up a business, I worked in corporates, but I'd never set my own business up. So it was like, I kind of vaguely know what you probably have to do, but I'd never done it myself. So it's like, well, where do I start? And I, just to pick up on your Skillshare thing, in Bristol, there's an organisation called Outset, and they provide free support for startup companies. So if you are thinking about setting up a business, really look them up, because they've been amazing. And they, when I did it, which was sort of 3 years ago, they did a 3-day course on setting up, the fundamentals of setting up your business. And then they have consultants, so you can always go back to them to ask questions. So that was really helpful for me in the first year when I was setting up the business, to have that support network around me. And I think now I work with a lot of peers. So I've been on an accelerator program. So I'm in a group called Radical, which is a women's entrepreneurial national organisation, which is fantastic. Again, if anyone, it's free, and then you can do other things. But you're surrounded by like-minded people. So there's a lot of creatives. There's everybody. There's lawyers. Anyone wanting to perhaps set up their business or grow their business. So surrounding myself with people that I can bounce ideas off, because it can be really lonely. That's one of the big things that really struggle with. Having worked in big teams, as a midwife, I'm working with teams. All my careers, I work with teams of people, and suddenly you're on your own, and you've got to make all the decisions. You've got to talk to yourself the whole time, and it's like it's really hard. And some days it's like, what have I done? What have I done? But then you get other days where you go, actually, this is really good. I know why I'm doing this, but it's not all roses. I would describe it as a complete roller coaster, honestly. But surround yourself with people that you can chat to, bounce ideas off, look for help. There is actually quite a lot of help out there that you can sort of pull on, which is great. And I think discipline of setting time aside. So my biggest challenge, and then I'll shut up, is actually making time for me to go into the studio to paint. Because Red Dog is all consuming, and if I just let it consume me, I could work on it 7 days a week. So I have to actually block days, and I structure my week. Every week I sit down on Monday and I structure my days. So I'm quite disciplined with how I do it. Otherwise, I'd never get to paint.
Yeah, and that's really important because that's the life source of your business. Yeah. I'm like that about exercise. For me, it's the mental health. For me, that's martial arts and dancing. But if I don't do it, I can't think in a straight line, and I'm horrible. But what you're saying about talking to yourself all the time, it's completely true, and you have to talk really nicely to yourself, because actually running any business, but a creative one as well, is just actually. And yeah, it's tough. It looks nice on Instagram, obviously, but it's not always.
It's like the swan, isn't it? The swan's kind of gliding along, and then underneath the legs are doing this.
I think on what you were saying about, surrounding yourself with amazing people as well is so true. And I think it can come from lots of different sources. Like it can be online communities or kind of peer support networks, or just your own friends, to have someone that you can bounce ideas off, or a studio space as well. Something I found really useful is being part of online learning things, aside from Skillshare, but I did a pattern design course with Bonnie Christine, who some of you may know is an amazing pattern designer. And part of that, we set up a kind of crit group that we just met up with regularly, just every couple of weeks, just on Zoom. I've never met them in real life, but I feel like they're quite good friends now over the last year. But it's been really great, and we just kind of present each other with recent patterns we've been working on and recent ideas we've been going through, and and work on that together and give each other feedback, which is it's lovely to have that kind of honest network of people that can say, actually, can you try it like this, or that doesn't quite work, and that's a good thing too.
Do you know, on that note, I've just recently gone back to the School for Social Entrepreneurs as a peer witness program. And so now that the social enterprise and the company that I'm building has got to a certain stage, I'm back, and I've actually got now a peer witness session. It's got an action learning set, and what it is designed to do is open up a space. So I'm in a group with other CEOs of charities and social enterprises and businesses with social values at heart. And you basically bring an issue in confidentiality that you might be trying to overcome. And this is another thing, to be able to speak freely and openly about stuff that, you don't want to have to admit sometimes that you're facing a real challenge, and to have people help you unpick it. They have this way, you clarify the issue, asking closed questions. And then there's a whole session where you ask each other open questions. And it's difficult because, say you were having an issue, and straight from my perspective, looking in, from being out here, not emotionally connected and tired from it all, I could instantly jump to going, oh, have you tried this? And that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to own and find your own solutions. So we almost coach each other. And it's a really difficult thing to do, actually, is open those kinds of questions, ask those open questions that then bring out and elicit, because you know what the answer is. You've got it. Sometimes it's just your own belief, or you just need a change of perspective to just step out of it again. it's a really helpful tool, actually, is that regular meetup. It's just twice a month on Zoom. Just being able to connect in that way is great. But I do definitely think that community is really important. I mean, the collective, definitely we see that amongst the students. Everyone works together and helps each other and brings their own unique experiences that have led them there. And I bet there's so many different in all the careers. Do you ever get the feeling that when you get to this point that everything you've been doing in life has led to this moment? You're like, oh, I didn't realise that was going to come in handy when I was, chief elf down in Swansea shopping centre. Somehow running events. Started there. It's so interesting. So what were your first steps then in terms of, what were your first steps and what was so important in doing what you do now?
I think my first step was probably deciding to stop doing theatre design and going to the job centre and saying, you'll be pleased to know I'm not looking for set design work anymore. And I'd thought about it, and I wasn't quite ready to just dive into interiors because it was such a different industry and I didn't really know it well then. But the job centre very kindly hooked me up with a mentor who didn't have any creative expertise at all, but was able to... I had no business acumen at all, so we were quite a good match. And he sort of pushed me towards just slowly offering services, just small things. And initially I'd said I wanted to just be a painter and decorator because having been a scenic artist, I knew I could do that. And Gwyn sort of pushed me very much out of my comfort zone to just start. And he got me my first interior design job working in a really dodgy furniture shop. Everything about it was so dodgy. But I gradually did up the whole place. So it was just the start. And I think that was the beginning for me. And sent me on all the sorts of courses that Sally was talking about that outset offer, the bit of financial management. And up until that point, I'd been freelance for about 10 years. And it was alien to me that you could know where you're at every month with your finances. I just thought you had to leave it until the 31st of January, like all the other artists I knew. It was a disaster. But we just didn't, you can't know what you don't know, and we literally didn't know. So, for anyone else who's thinking of starting something up that's creative, definitely get some advice from someone that knows what they're doing.
I think a lot of what got me sort of going was naivety. Just like, actually, the unknown.
I think
just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it, because if you thought about all the challenges and everything that's going to face you, you would never, ever, ever, ever start.
It would totally put you off.
But actually, all these challenges is what really excites me, because it's actually trying to work out how to get around them. So nothing is impossible. It's just, you've just got to work out a way to do it. And that's what the fun is. I kind of treat it as a bit of a game, but in a very serious way, obviously. But it's a game to navigate. I think running your own business is about navigation, and it's never a straight line. You'll be wiggling away, and unexpected things will pop into in your path. But actually, the exciting thing is working out how to get around it, solve it, and move on.
It's those moments, isn't it, where you don't have any control. And like the comment about, that would look nice in the kitchen. Yeah. Suddenly, off you go on another different direction. It happens so often. Yeah. And it's just been adaptable, I think.
And also open to it.
Yeah.
So, you hear it, but it's actually being open to... I kind of use the analogy a lot of, I don't know if people have done this, but, when you're on a jetty and there's a lake, and it's probably in Scandinavia or something, or Switzerland, it's going to be really cold. And you stand on there and you've got to go in, and it's like, this is going to be a bit painful. But you just go, right, 1, 2, 3, jump, and you jump. And I think sometimes going into business is a bit like that. You just go for it. you know.
And then
you'll
that
work it
feeling
out.
afterwards when you come out all...
Yeah, and you'll go, oh my God, that was amazing. But did you know that actually startups, women are, I can't tell you the stat, I can't remember it, so I don't want to be quoted, but the stat is that basically female founders are far more successful than male founders when it comes to investment. And I think it's because we can multitask, actually.
How do you find being able to ask for what you want?
I think that is, it's always a challenge, isn't it, to be able to say with precise determination, I want this.
Also, charging for your work. That's a real kind of guilt thing sometimes, isn't it? It's really challenging to be like, well, I want this much for my really hard effort, and I'm going to give you everything I've got. And actually, it's worth so much more. I'm going to totally undersell myself.
Yeah, and I think coming from, I think on a lot of creative courses, often the commerciality of a creative product is not talked about or not taught. And like you were saying with finances as well, we're not kind of taught how to do a tax return, how to register as self-employed or sole trader or whatever. So that's something you really have to throw yourself into and learn. But it's, part of the challenge as well, isn't it, to go down that route.
Yeah, and I think with pricing, it's been really interesting because when I started as an artist, it was like, well, how much do I charge for my first painting? I mean, I don't know. And the reality is it's, well, how much are people prepared to pay for it? So I had my first one I sold to somebody I didn't know, because that's always the thing, isn't it, really? They offered me an amount of money, and that then became my benchmark. And then from there, when I exhibited, the prices just gently went up a little bit. And then, of course, it completely throws it when you go into a gallery because they take 50% commission. So they wang it up even more. But then that's the price that you have to... So it's really... And with the glass, it's been really interesting for me working out how much to charge for it because it is bespoke. No one else is doing what I do. And I have to stay true. And it's very easy for people to go, oh, yeah, but, you could, surely you can do it for cheaper than that. It's like, well, no, this is the price. And if you'd like it, then that would be lovely. But if not, then maybe go on to Shutterstock and get something from there. But, well, but it takes a lot of courage to do that because when you're trying to build your business and your cash flow's pretty tight, it's like, well, should I, is it better for me to take it? But it's then underselling yourself. And as an artist, if you charged I'm sure everybody, if you charged per hour for the work you do and produce, people wouldn't buy it on a standard hourly rate. So everyone gets a bargain, I reckon, from creatives.
That's true, yeah. I think there's also, it's also great to look at like guidance of, industry guidance around things like day rates as well, when it's not... when it's just a project that you're doing, perhaps as a, facilitating something or that kind of thing. And AN, the artist newsletter, are really great for guides on that, which I found really helpful. And actually, amazingly, I was sent that by a commissioner that I was working for. And they were like, oh, I think your day rate's a little bit low. Here's a chart that the AN have put out. And I was like, okay, I'll add a bit more on then. So that was really, really lovely, actually, and very reassuring to hear that from a client, because you could then, be like, actually, I have been graduated for X amount of time, I've got X amount of experience and all of that, and actually that's really important to kind of, stay true to that, and I know that if they, if they're not okay with that, then maybe you should be working for someone else anyway. So, yeah.
I definitely think it's about finding your market, isn't it? That platform where you're going to sell. And it's really tricky because actually all the work that you're sat in the same room as, all these chairs, there's hours of work. They're stitch perfect. They've had to pass their exams. And obviously that's a really high value. And there's some wise decisions that need to be made in terms of fabrics and how you appeal to your market without, again, losing your own creativity and selling your soul to make the money. God, it's such a juggling act, isn't it? And actually that's this afternoon with the chair party. That platform is trying to create a route to market for these kinds of items. But again, the upholsterers, as an independent individual, wouldn't necessarily have that availability because it's a full-time job running a retail shop and doing the upholstery. It's like how you make room for doing your painting. You need to set it aside. So it's almost like you need to always be about 6 different businesses in one. Let's call it departments. Yeah. Is that how you do it?
Just to have all the different email addresses being like marketing at Leigh-Anne Treadwell. Yeah, I think also around that, it's just so important to have to be led by your own values. And I think often working with different clients and knowing which projects to agree to or to not take on, or which commissions to agree to not take on, knowing your own core values, and when something is kind of flagged as not sitting quite right, or when you feel like you've seen something that's ringing a little alarm bell, is to really listen to that. And I still don't do that often. It's very frustrating when you go, at the beginning of the project, when I got that first email inquiry, I thought, it doesn't sound like there's something a bit off there, but I'll see, I'm sure it'll be fine. But it's really important to just listen to that and know that, you know what you need to get out of a project, you know what you can deliver and for how long and how much and all of that. And to just, trust your instincts with that is so important.
Yeah, it takes a few goes of getting it really wrong first, I found anyway, to to know when to actually just say thanks, but no thanks. I've said no to quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you have to. I think sometimes you'll spread yourself too thin and you end up totally up the wrong path. Does anyone here have a business plan? Oh, Sal has.
Sorry. Corporate background. Sorry. I do. And I was just about to say, actually, what is really useful, and this is stuff that I've learned from my previous careers, is about visioning and about actually begin with the end in mind. So it's, where do you want to get to? And you dream, just dream. In 5 years' time, this is what I'd love to be doing. And that way, you've got a point in the sand. And then you basically go, okay, so if I want to be there in 5 years' time, what is it that I need to put in place to get there? So, it might be to go on some courses, or it might be to bring certain people in, or some sort of development. But then you can actually start to plan it. Because if you don't have a vision, it's a bit like going out on a drive without a map and you don't really know where you're going. So, having a vision, I think, is really, really important, and having values. Really think about, what are your core values of your company and, what you're creating, and a purpose. What's your purpose? And by having those, it just shapes and helps frame your business, so that it's so easy. Well, it's so much easier then to go out and talk about it, because you've thought it through and you can articulate it really clearly. So I think they're really important. And I do have a business plan, I'm afraid. I don't always follow it.
I work with a document every now and then when it all gets a bit muddled in my head, because there's so many different revenue streams. You need to have those as well, don't you? Just different routes of income coming in. And actually, a tool that I came across at the School for Social Entrepreneurs was it's called a business model canvas, and it's one sheet. I usually print it out on an A3 paper, and it's got all the segments, all the different routes to market and everything else, all the different supplier chains, whatever it is that you need, and you just literally write everything in Post-it notes and stick it in a box, and you get this visual in one hit, rather than pages and pages and pages of business document, to then really kind of bird's eye view. Like, yes, great, that's what it is. And that changes quite often as well when you introduce new things. It's much quicker, instant way of being. So look up the business model canvas as a way of just... And sometimes it does get all up in your head, doesn't it? As a visual person.
So important. And, people think, business plan, it's like pages of writing. And some people do have pages of writing, but I can guarantee you that 99% of them will never look at it. I worked as a management consultant in the city, and we were paid to write strategies. Nobody ever looked at them after we'd done it, So I use visual. I'm so visual. I have Post-it notes with big bits of paper everywhere, and that's how I visualise stuff. And I can actually explain it so much quicker to people I'm working with when I've got it just drawn out. So it doesn't have to be fancy schmancy, and it'll change. So, nothing's in concrete.
Yeah. Something I've found quite helpful is a kind of intention setting tool as well is there's a really great book called The Working Women's Handbook, and it's just like a little kind of pocket-sized book of just business advice and tips and some stuff about finance as well. It's very helpful. But something they suggested in that was to set out a kind of vision board for your year, a year ahead, and every year to change it and set it as your desktop background for your computer. So every time you sit down to work, you've got this kind of vision board of your intentions. And I've done that for the last couple of years, and actually it's really helped. So when I've thought, actually, I do a lot of map illustration, or I want to kind of like build up my pattern design stuff or whatever it is, I kind of collate like maybe a project I'm proud of that I've done or other artists' work that I admire and put it all onto this kind of board. And then every time you kind of open up to work, it's sort of ready to inspire you. And I found it really helpful. And actually you kind of can take it off then at the end of the year to be like, oh, actually did quite a lot of map commissions this year. That's done now. And that was a really nice way to kind of, explore that and set that intention.
Sounds really satisfying, actually. A bit like a list when you get to cross it off. Yeah. Just like, yes. The list tends to get a bit longer each time. So we all have pretty much bespoke services, don't we? So, how do we go about... I suppose it's collaboration, isn't it, with your customer? Any tips or tricks or experiences you want to share with that kind of involvement, how you work? What kind of things might help? I know that, again, I draw a lot. Not perfectly either. And just drawing as I'm explaining things really helps as well to give a visual. And I know that quite often using things like Photoshop can help people visualize what their product might look like once they've had their fabric put on. But I'm not particularly tech savvy either. Like a jack of all trades. And you just muddle through, don't you? But I'm just wondering if you guys have any specific kind of formula that you work with.
I often find I'm a bit of a jack of all trades as well. And I often find that I kind of tailor portfolios to different commissions and, I'm kind of straddle all sorts of different worlds from, pattern design, interiors. Used to do a lot of stuff around architecture and public space stuff and then public engagement. I work with universities a lot as well. So it's always kind of a funny mishmash of portfolios that I kind of pick bits and send them out as when I'm pitching for projects. But also just to kind of build that trust with the client and build that trust with the commissioner and talk them through every stage in a very kind of step-by-step process. And then if it is something visual, of course, drawing and providing sketches and helping to illustrate it as much as possible and to help them visualize. But often I think people in our kind of creative visual world are commissioning us because they can't visualize it. So that's often a challenge with clients that perhaps don't have that vision to help them see it. And if they can't see it, to help them trust you enough that they just go, okay, you do it then. So I'm sure you guys must find that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I never want to do that kind of interior design like 1990s changing rooms where it's all a complete surprise and there's this big reveal and tears. I don't want to get involved in that. But most of my work is obviously very service-based. But most of the time I've just done a lot of consultation and left people with like quite a comprehensive list of what to do and why I'm making this recommendation, and with sort of carefully selected pictures and stuff to sort of help them on their way because they want to DIY it. And it's only occasionally that I'll get involved in like the actual installation stage as well. But I'm also not that techie, and I hand draft like a dinosaur. And but I justify this as when the zombie apocalypse comes, the computers won't work, and when we have to rebuild, we need to be able to hand draft with pencil and paper. So, but I am going to learn CAD as well, or SketchUp. But I've started using my iPad and an Apple Pencil to sort of hand render, hand sketch impressions of finished interiors. And actually, the sort of size of projects that I work on, that tends to be enough for people, which suits me because it's just me at the moment, so I don't want anything too big anyway.
I think that's lovely as well, because also that feels more bespoke because it's the artist mark, it's like, it's not just like kind of, really graphic, soulless thing. It's like this beautiful sketch that you've done with like your time and hand and vision. I think that's great.
Yeah,
I'd pay for that.
There is a market for that. There are people that want that sort of hand done feel, I think.
I think it feels much more authentic, doesn't it?
Yeah. I can't do it any other way yet, so...
You don't tell them that. You just say, I'm doing this specially just for you. Just for you.
Zoe, I think because I attended one of your masterclasses in interior design and I took away from it loads, but one of the things that I then have implemented in my bespoke service is the consultation questionnaire.
Oh, yes.
And I remember you ask people how they want to feel in their spaces. And that's how we now pose that question to all of our clients when they approach us to say they want their chair reupholstering. And I'm sure they're not expecting the kind of really deep question of, how do you want to feel when you sit in this chair? But it works. It does.
That. I think it's really important. I think interior design as an industry has historically been very stuffy and very much about flashing cash. And actually, for me, it's about supporting people living or working, depending on what kind of space it is. But design is about people. So I think how you feel about it is really important.
Certainly for my glass, it is about how you feel. So with painting, it's about emotional response to the painting. And what I do is painting. So it's art. So what I'm about is bringing art into living spaces, basically, but in a different form. I'm really interested in merging technology, material, and technology as well. So it's an art together. But when I speak to customers or clients about the design that they want, COVID has actually done me a favour in that people have got much more used to videoing. So I tend to do a consult and video into their space. And so I can hold up the bits of glass, the samples at my end, and we can talk about how they want to feel, what sort of, do they want something vibrant, do they want something energetic or a bit calmer or whatever, and then we can look through the design collection and start to think about it. And the way, and I'll explain later about the way that we actually produce it, but it's pretty impossible to visualise what the Red Dog glass will look like if you're choosing a sample but you want a 4 metre stretch of glass. So we've got a process that we go through to do that, and I'll explain that later. Otherwise, I'll have nothing to tell anyone later at this table. But it is very much about feel and what experience they want, and it's very personal. So,
and also if they're spending a lot of money potentially, you definitely don't want clients investing in something they're not entirely sure about either. No surprises.
And in terms of, obviously, in interiors, you need lots of skilled people that all kind of contribute to a space. How do you go about navigating collaborations with other people you might have to come across?
Oh, I'm really hoping to collaborate with Sally, but I don't think it's going to happen on my current project. Gutted.
And Ellie, get Ellie involved too, and me.
Sorry?
All of us would do it.
We could all work
we could just
together
team
at
up,
some
couldn't we? Yeah, I absolutely love. I think actually the aim is to have Sal's glassware in my house, interior designed by Zoe, and all my furnishings and patterns. Maybe some wallpaper from Ellie.
But I think, joking aside, there is opportunity though, because I think certainly from my perspective, when I go out and I'm talking to a lot of designers, I'm talking to a lot of people or people in their homes, there might be an opportunity where people are going, but I'm looking for such and such. And I can go, get in contact with this person because they're the expert at that. And I think it's so important for me, it's really important to help bring everyone into the fold with it. And sometimes it's really quite hard to find specialists. And a lot of people that kind of reach out to get support, creative support, is, as Ellie mentioned, they don't often have it naturally themselves, which is why they've come to ask for it. So if we can help steer them as well to some great creatives, then that's brilliant. That's part of it, isn't it?
That's great. Should we go for questions to the audience? So far, what's everyone thinking? Any questions? Juliet's got the microphone somewhere. Hopefully it won't bite your ears.
Sally, I love everyone's work, but I'm really aware of your work from before, and I was just wondering, when you made that sort of crossover from artist into that more commercial space, how you went about finding clients?
Yeah, good question. So I walked the streets of London for a start. I tell you what, glass is blinking heavy, and my samples are 300 by 300 because they're pieces of art. I can't do small ones because it doesn't show it off. So I got a website up, first thing. I then hounded Bristol Life magazine and any magazine I could possibly, Bishopston Matters, I've got a story to tell. So I didn't want to spend it, I didn't have any money to spend, so it's about getting articles written rather than advertising. Personally, I think advertising doesn't give you a return on investment generally. I think it's better to get an article. The thing that I've discovered though is that one has to write one's own article and then you submit it. And in fact, Bristol Life did I got a double page spread very early on in Bristol Life. I wrote the whole thing apart from the title, and they entitled it Stained Glass. It's like, it's not stained glass. It's like, But anyway, I got 2 pages, so I wasn't going to complain. But so articles, so it's just about getting out there. I decided, because I'm targeting fairly high end, I thought, right, I need to be in London. So Wigmore Street is the street where the Uber kitchen shops are. So I took my trolley with my glass and I just walked straight in. I didn't even make appointments. I just walked in and said, I'm Sally and I'm do this, da da da. And I didn't even have my computer on me, so I got them to open their computer to my website and talk to them about it. And so in Wigmore Street, I've got a big piece of glass now in Pogan in Wigmore, and I've just negotiated to CGI Red Dog onto their marketing materials. So that will be going out that way. That's free. You just have to be quite creative. Baltop, I've got glass in there. I've got glass in Pogan in Hampstead, B&B Italian in Kensington, and it's purely from just walking in and being a bit cheeky, really. But I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I just need to get out there. And it's about being visible, because the challenge I've got is because no one else is really doing what I do, they don't know I'm here. So I've just recently, in the last month, brought on some marketing. Well, I've had marketing help last year, but we're going for it now this year. And so we're looking at different ways to do it. So website, word of mouth, and then working with interior designers. So I spent probably 3 months contacting lots of interior designers in Bristol and meeting them in my studio. So just to get to know, just so that you guys know I'm here, and you might have one project a year that might be suitable, but that's great, So, yeah.
That question's quite a good one for everybody, actually. How do you go about finding your clients?
I don't know. How does it happen? I think everything really comes through my website. It's starting to happen through word of mouth and referral from previous happy clients, so that's nice. But that's a slow burn. But that's fine. Everything about my business is a slow burn. I've been going for like 10 years, and I feel like I'm just at the beginning now.
Yeah, but you've been building the experience and your reputation. Your reputation is huge. But it is.
Zoe's on a TV show, everybody. Has anyone spotted her? BBC Two? Look how embarrassing. It's my unique, my unique B&B, isn't it?
They couldn't call it Airbnb because it's
already
on
taken.
the BBC. But you know what you were saying earlier about that feeling that everything you've ever done sort of leads to this moment? That working on that project absolutely felt like that for me, because I've done so many weird things in the past and worked as a community artist. And actually, the skills that I learnt doing that job just came in so handy because I was working with homeowners and people who were setting up B&Bs. Oh, sorry. You just hold it for me. Sorry. So I was working on glamping sites, and these were places that sometimes they were established businesses already, or sometimes they were completely new to it, but they wanted to make an Airbnb out of a shed in the bottom of the garden or whatever it was, or a UFO and all sorts of weird things. But I'd be working with those homeowners and making craft stuff with them as well, and sort of finding what was the story for them. What were we going to... I don't want to use the word theme. What would we theme the design around? But we had to find something that was authentic to them and would look good in the space as well. And it was really all that sort of interpersonal work that I used to do in community arts just came in. I don't think I would have been able to do the job had I not done that in the past, sort of facilitating people in making weird lanterns and weird wearable puppet costumes in carnivals, all sorts of mad stuff. Yeah, it's amazing the weird little journey you go on, isn't it? It's all relevant.
I think I've had a similar thing as well, coming from community art background too, and bringing pattern design into that. So I've done participatory pattern design, where I've worked with communities to identify, for them to draw the motifs for a pattern that represented like something about their local area or their community, and then made that into kind of like an open source swatch book kind of thing that represents. It was for Philwood, for Null West Media Centre, for the Philwood 80th anniversary of the community centre there. And it was just really lovely process to kind of bring people into the design and for people to see, quite a straightforward motif that they've drawn be repeated, and to the impact of a repeat, and to kind of make that something really visual. And then we got fabric printed that then went back into community products, so then they could make, they sent me like ties, photos of ties that they'd made for like the CEO of Null West Media Centre and stuff like that. And it was just really nice to kind of, I try and, with all of my creative work, I try and have that cyclical process so that it comes from, a co-designed or at least like communicated process with a client or co-design process with communities, into something that I can kind of go away and work on and then bring back and then kind of make something together. And it's this cycle that I think is really, something I really enjoy. And also to try and gift back something, to not just take, you want to be able to involve people and make it feel like they own it as well,
Yeah, that's really important, I think. We've all got kind of ethics and values in all of our
They're
business,
really
haven't we?
important, I think. And
Yeah.
in fact, it was 4 years ago now, on an upholstery course that I was running in Dartington. That's where I met Ali, who became my coach. She's called my angel, Ali. And it was invaluable to have that, to bring those values, to elicit them and to embed them into every way that we do everything, or at least try to. And in fact, she became business manager and has recently retired. So I'm on my own again. But she's still there at the end of her text. It's great to have those people around that to sort of just help you understand where you're coming from, and therefore then the trust, the honesty, the way that you communicate. It's all so important. It's building relationships, isn't it?
We were talking a bit about mentoring earlier as well, and that's something that I think it's great. I think it's so great to have a mentor, and also something you can ask for. I think like if you're thinking about starting a business or in the processes of it, look at people that inspire you already and just reach out to them. It's amazing that people are quite flattered, I think, normally, and respond with enthusiasm. At least if they say no, it's fine, but that's the worst that can happen. I think with Skillshare, I've been able to, I was part of a mentoring program for that, so I went from being a student to a tutor, and they set me up, partnered me with a fellow top teacher on there, before I was a top teacher actually, who's an illustrator based in Toronto, and we kind of had a kind of Zoom mentorship over the last couple of years, which was just brilliant to just feel like there's someone looking out for you, and actually once the kind of official period of this mentorship ended, we'd developed such a good relationship that we went on, and now I can kind of give her feedback on her stuff and she asks me, and it's a bit more of a nicely balanced thing. So yeah, I think always reach out. It's so nice to just bring those people around you.
Yeah, I totally agree.